They told you procrastination is a flaw, that it makes you lazy, weak, undisciplined. They were wrong. Machiavelli would smirk at such simplifications, not because they're false, but because they're so pathetically incomplete. Laziness is easy to cure. Discipline is simple to build. You've done harder things. You've suffered more. But still the thing sits undone. The message unsent. The action delayed. Why? Because discipline is a lie they taught you to keep you obedient, to make you internalize the whip so they wouldn't have to wield it themselves. You weren't trained to work. You were trained to obey. And when no one is watching you disobey the only way you know how, through silence, through stillness, through delay. You do it under the disguise of resting, waiting for motivation, or needing more time. But Machiavelli would call it what it is, resistance, not weakness resistance. And resistance is power, misused. You don't procrastinate because you're lazy. You procrastinate because you've been lied to about what discipline really is. You think it's pushing through, grinding, obeying the calendar, serving the system. But that's not discipline. True discipline is power aligned with will. It's silence pointed at a target. What you call procrastination is often your body refusing to obey your performance. It's rebellion in disguise. Because let's tell the truth, how many of the things you delay are things you truly chose? Not your boss's deadlines, not school's assignments, not society's milestones. Strip those away, and you might find that your so-called procrastination is simply your refusal to invest in things you never believed in. But they convinced you that this resistance is laziness, that it's a defect. So you punish yourself for it. You turn guilt into fuel. You whip your own back. You think that's strength. Machiavelli would say this: a man who punishes himself is easier to rule than one who refuses to kneel. Discipline was never about making you strong. It was about making you predictable. The disciplined man is useful to others. He arrives on time. He completes the task. He never questions the task itself. He is productive. And productivity is the currency of the ruled. But you're not undisciplined. You are just not theirs anymore. Your procrastination may be the only true act of defiance you still allow yourself. Still don't mistake this as freedom, because rebellion without aim is just more control. You're still reacting, still caught in the loop. You delay what you don't choose, and you never choose what might threaten your mask. The watchers know this. They see you scrolling, avoiding, pretending. They don't call you out. They don't need to. They've already won. Because the longer you delay your own path, the more useful you are to theirs. So what happens next? You wake up. You scream into discipline again. You tell yourself, I'll be stronger this time. I'll stick to the schedule. You call it discipline, but it's desperation. You chase routines, apps, productivity hacks, but nothing sticks because you're still mistaking control for clarity. You're still trying to dominate yourself instead of understanding your resistance. You think beating yourself will fix you. No, you don't need more control. You need more truth, because procrastination isn't weakness. It's misplaced power. And here's the coldest truth of all. You procrastinate because it's the only way you still get to say no. Not loudly, not with words, but in secret, in silence, in delay. It's your last rebellion. But rebellions rot if they don't evolve into revolutions. So the question is, how long will you keep confusing your delay with safety? And how long until you realize that discipline, real discipline, is not about getting things done. It's about getting free. You think you're avoiding pain. You're not. You're loyal to comfort. And comfort is the most elegant form of control ever designed. They don't need to hurt you anymore. They don't need to command you. You've been conditioned to stay still for far less. Comfort is cleaner, quieter, more efficient, and you love it. Your brain says you'll act once you feel ready, that once the pressure hits, you'll rise. But the truth is, comfort has trained you not to rise, but to wait. You don't procrastinate to escape discomfort. You procrastinate to stay faithful to your comfort. It's the loyalty no one talks about, the real addiction. The warm pull of the easy task. The gentle scroll of the feed. The ambient hum of background noise that says you're not enough, but at least you're not failing yet. Because action means exposure. It means risk. It means having to meet yourself where you actually are. And comfort doesn't want that. It wants you dulled, contained, half awake. The man who is too comfortable cannot be dangerous. And that's what the world really wants from you. Not strength, not genius, not fire, just predictability. And so comfort becomes your leash, and you volunteer to wear it. You begin to delay the hard thing. Not because it hurts, but because the comfort of avoiding it is too good. The bed is too soft. The show too distracting. The food too close. The delay too familiar. Machiavelli would call it a velvet prison. And the cruelest part, you built it yourself. Every time you said, just 5 more minutes. Every time you opened your phone instead of your future. Every time you rewarded delay with a treat. You reinforce the chains. You mistake it for freedom. You say, I'll do it later because I can choose when. But that's not choice. That's deferment of pain in service of pleasure. And those who serve pleasure serve someone else's power. The watchers understand this. They don't need to push you anymore. You've become self-regulating. You administer your own dopamine. You microdose joy until you no longer seek meaning. And still you ask, why do I procrastinate? Because you've been taught to love your cage. You don't even see the bars anymore. You just call them options. But comfort was never about options. It's about sedation. You've numbed yourself so deeply, the idea of effort now feels like death. Not because it is, but because it interrupts your anesthetic. Machiavelli wouldn't pity you. He'd study you because your delay is predictable, timed, programmed, rewarded. Even now, there's something you're putting off. You can feel it pulsing at the edge of your awareness. And yet here you are reading, learning, consuming more comfort disguised as clarity. How does that feel? Comfort has a cost, and it's always the same potential. Everything you want is on the other side of uncomfortable action. But you won't cross, not because you can't, but because you've attached your identity to what's easy. And worse, you've built your identity around waiting. You say, I'm the kind of person who takes time to start. I need to feel ready. I work best under pressure. No, that's not who you are. That's who you became when you gave away your edge. Procrastination isn't a delay. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Each time you delay, you reinforce the comfort loop. And that loop doesn't just take your time, it rewires your identity. You become someone who can't move without crisis. And then you wonder why peace feels boring. You wonder why rest becomes guilt and urgency becomes your only motivator. Because comfort, once normalized, becomes your new baseline. And anything above baseline now feels like a threat. You've calibrated your nervous system to fear progress. That's why you scroll instead of act. Why you plan instead of execute. Why you say soon instead of now. Because the moment you act, comfort ends, and you don't know who you are without it. But the worst part, you love it. That's what makes this trap so lethal. It doesn't feel like prison. It feels like I deserve this. But Machiavelli would remind you, no king ever fears a man at rest. He fears the one who rises before he must. You procrastinate because it keeps you from becoming dangerous. And the comfort you cling to, it was never yours. It was given to keep you tamed. You think you're avoiding failure. But the truth is worse. You're addicted to it because it's familiar, it's predictable, it's safe. Not because it's good, but because it feels like home. You've built your identity around falling short, around almost making it, around being the one who could have if only you started earlier, slept better, focused harder. This is the theater of your life, a performance of almost. You delay because failure on your terms is less painful than success that changes everything. Machiavelli knew this. A man prefers a predictable loss to an unpredictable transformation. Your procrastination is your insurance policy, because if you don't fully try, you never have to fully lose. It's genius in a way. A self-preserving strategy dressed up as helplessness. You miss the deadline, you submit it rushed, you run out of time, and you say, that wasn't really me, I could have done better. Exactly. Because as long as you could have, you never have to face what happens when you actually do. Procrastination protects you from the unknown. Success is the unknown. Responsibility is the unknown. Consistency, the most foreign land of all. So you cling to the chaos you know. You grew up around it. The mess, the scramble, the last-minute save, the tension before the crash. It shaped you. It taught you how to function inside disorder. It taught you how to survive delay, how to perform under panic. And so now you replicate that pattern. You recreate the stress. You rehearse the fall, not because you love pain, but because pain makes sense to you. Stability, progress, peace, those are alien, and the subconscious clings to what it understands. Machiavelli wouldn't call this laziness. He'd call it ritual. A dark, repeating ritual of psychological self-binding. One that preserves your identity even as it destroys your outcomes. Because let's be honest, you don't fear failure. You fear what comes after success. The pressure, the expectation, the eyes watching. If you win, they'll expect you to win again. If you show your full ability, there's no more excuses. No more potential, just performance. And that terrifies you. Because potential is safe. It's eternal. It's who you could be. It's undefined, unchallenged, unprovable. But once you act, you're exposed, you're real. And that's when the game becomes dangerous. So instead you delay. You delay not out of apathy, but out of fear. And you call that fear, I'm just not ready yet. You are, but readiness was never the issue. You're addicted to failure because it doesn't demand identity. It allows you to float, to speculate, to say, one day I'll, and that one day becomes your mask. It keeps people at a distance. It keeps pressure manageable. It keeps you in control. But control is not growth. Control is not power. Control is just another prison with your name on the door this time. So what now? Will you break the loop? No, not until you stop seeing your patterns as flaws and start seeing them as choices. You are not cursed. You are conditioned. And what was conditioned can be deconstructed, but only if you're willing to burn the ritual, to stop rehearsing failure for comfort, to stop delaying action just to preserve the illusion of potential, to face the silence after effort, to be fully seen. You want to become more, you'll have to let the version of you that's addicted to almost die. And that won't be clean. It will hurt because your delay has been your identity. It's shaped your friendships, your coping, your sense of time. But Machiavelli would whisper, the man who lets go of comfort gains control. The man who lets go of identity gains power. You don't fear the task. You fear becoming the kind of person who does the task because that person can't hide anymore. That person doesn't get to blame failure on delay. That person doesn't get to fantasize about potential. That person owns their result, win or lose. And you've been hiding from that moment your whole life. So the truth is this, you don't procrastinate to avoid pain. You procrastinate to preserve your myth. The myth that you're brilliant but just busy, that you're talented but just tired, that you're capable but just unmotivated. It's a beautiful lie, but it's still a lie. And every minute you delay it grows until one day it will become too big to hold, and it will crush you, unless you crush it first. You think your procrastination is a private war, but the world is watching, and worse, it's benefiting. You see, the system doesn't punish procrastinators, it recruits them, because the man who delays his own power becomes a tool for someone else's. And the system is hungry for tools. You hesitate, they advance. You wait, they move. You doubt, they decide. That's the math of power. And you're on the wrong end of it. You're not just wasting time, you're donating advantage to strangers, to rivals, to systems you claim to hate. Machiavelli understood this. He who pauses for clarity becomes a servant to the one who acts in chaos. And here you are waiting for readiness, hoping for permission, talking about timing. While they are moving, they are less intelligent than you, less capable, less aware, but they act. And in war, action beats potential every time. You call it perfectionism, they call it paralysis. You call it self-care, they call it retreat. You think you're being careful, they think you've surrendered. Because in the world of strategy, hesitation has a smell, and the watchers smell it on you. They know the man who delays his decisions is the same man who folds under pressure. They know the man who needs the right mood, the perfect moment, the ideal circumstance is not dangerous. He's decorative, useful, disposable, predictable, and so they place him where he belongs in the middle, among the tired, among the obedient, among the almost made-its. You are not being punished for procrastinating. You are being harvested. Your attention, your creativity, your indecision. You think your delay is neutral, but every delay is a gap, and every gap is filled by someone else's will. The world does not wait. It does not pause. It consumes, and it loves men like you, half awake, full of plans, starved of execution, because you build the dreams they step on, you design the logos they slap on products, you write the captions they monetize, you imagine the projects they execute faster, louder, dumber, and still win, and you watch them rise, not because they're better, but because you were busy getting ready, they were busy moving. You blame the system, the culture, the pace of modern life. But Machiavelli would say, if your enemy moves while you wait, he is not the threat you are. Every time you say, I'll start tomorrow, the system smiles. Because it knows what you don't. That delay becomes design. That postponement becomes programming. That silence becomes compliance. You think you're preserving freedom when you delay. But every minute you hesitate, your options shrink. Your path narrows. Your confidence erodes. Until you no longer choose, you comply. Until you no longer act, you react. Until you no longer resist, you consume, and they win. You thought procrastination was a quirk, but it was a breach. A soft, quiet place where the system enters not to dominate, but to absorb. And now you've become part of it. They don't need to steal your energy, you give it. They don't need to control your time, you forfeit it. You're not procrastinating, you're being trained to wait, to flinch, to fantasize instead of fight. And here's the sharpest truth. They've already placed the crown on your head, but it's made of fog. Because while you waited for greatness, they gave you dreams instead. Dreams that kept you busy. Busy enough to feel like you're moving while standing still. Busy enough to talk like a leader while acting like a follower. Busy enough to feel exhausted without doing anything dangerous. This isn't failure. It's precision-engineered delay, and it works. Because you still think you're the one in control. You still think your hesitation is harmless. But Machiavelli would say, the man who delays is already captured. So stop asking why you procrastinate. Start asking who benefits when you do. You say you're stuck, but you're not. You're complicit. You know exactly what you're doing when you delay. You know the feeling, the tight pause, the decision disguised as distraction. It's not unconscious. It's a ritual, and rituals require belief. You've built your life on a belief that delay protects you, that hesitation buys time, that maybe just maybe this time the pressure will make the path clearer, the action easier, the task less threatening. But Machiavelli would laugh, because delay does not cleanse fear, it calcifies it. The longer you wait, the stronger the monster becomes. And you know this, still you wait. Because if you acted, really acted, you would have to destroy the story you've used to survive. You would have to become someone else, and that terrifies you. So you protect your old self. You guard your identity with delay. You cradle your familiar patterns and call them me. You claim you're stuck, but you're not stuck. You're loyal to the version of you that doesn't risk, to the version that copes instead of conquers, to the version that dreams big talks, smart looks brave, but does not move. And every day you obey that version, you make it stronger. You feed it, you serve it, until it becomes your king, until your power exists only in theory, until your action exists only in intention, and your potential becomes a shadow you chase but never meet. Let's be sharp now. You know what to do. You always have. You're not waiting for clarity. You're waiting for the moment when action no longer threatens your comfort. That moment doesn't exist. Action always hurts. It always exposes. It always ends the fantasy. But that's the point. You can't enter your next life without killing the current one. And that's the truth you've avoided. You say, I'm not ready. What you mean is I'm not willing to bury the version of me that loves the delay. Because delay has kept you innocent. Delay has kept you blameless. Delay has allowed you to keep hoping without trying. But Machiavelli would say, the man who refuses the cost of evolution must pay the tax of stagnation forever. You've paid that tax long enough. It's in your shoulders, your sleep, your shame. You feel it every time you wake up and remember what you didn't do. Every time you open the file and close it again. Every time you say, tomorrow. That's not resistance anymore. That's submission. You're not stuck. You're just not willing. Not yet. But you could be. You could choose to betray your old self today. Not violently. Not with declarations. Just by acting. One decision. One task. One thing done at the cost of your myth. Because you already know, the only cure for procrastination is execution. Not motivation, not clarity, not readiness. Just the ruthless silent moment where you stop thinking and move. You'll feel it the moment you begin the grief, the fear, the death of the version of you who believed delay was safety. But something else will rise in its place. Something more dangerous, something real, and the world will notice. Because the man who acts without waiting, without warning, is no longer a tool. He's a weapon. And for the first time in your life, you won't be managed. You won't be watched. You won't be delayed. You will be present, alive, unapologetically responsible for what you become. And once you touch that moment, you will never go back. You are not broken. You are not lazy. You are standing at the doorway of change, quietly protecting a version of yourself that no longer serves you. Let it go. Mourn it, then move. The life you're avoiding is already waiting, and it doesn't need perfection. It needs presence. Start small. Start quietly, but start. And when you do, you'll hear the silence shift. That's your future noticing you. That's power returning. And when you rise, you'll wonder why you waited so long. If this story opened your eyes, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment your thoughts below. Subscribe for more.